Hello, everyone. Happy non-farm payrolls revision down day. How's everyone doing? Good morning, Sterling. Thank you for putting in all the different earnings from yesterday afternoon and this morning. We had the non-farm payrolls come out a bit big. Well, the big thing wasn't the headline number, although it did miss. 73K versus 110K expected. The bigger problem was the revisions. The revisions, I think you put them in here. Let me see if I can find them. Where are they? There we go. Here. Non-farm payroll gains were sharply revised down. May's total dropped from 144 to 19,000, and June's from 147 to 14,000, a combined of over 258,000 jobs. That's the bigger issue. And so therefore we have the euro pop. We had a little double bottom pattern on there. The dollar drop, gold pops, rate cuts for September back on the table. So there we go. There we go. Good morning, Patrick. Good morning, Jacob. Again, we have a lot of earnings. Good morning, Dean. Good morning, Royal Palms. Hello, Shahazahaba. Oh boy, that's the one. That's tough for me. Sorry, I butchered your name. I'm really sorry. I'm really bad with names. Could you put that phonetically so I don't butcher it, please? So I can get that right. Rick. See, I can say R-I-C. Rick, I can say. I can do that. See, I even have trouble with Sterling. Not really. I've practiced Sterling's name. David, good morning. Jake, good morning. So, thank you, everybody. Thank you for tuning in also on Rummer. Oh, boy. On Rummer. No, I have not been drinking on a Friday morning. Oh, that sounds disgusting. Okay. So, pretty eventful morning so far. Good morning, John. We had non-farm payrolls already covered the headline number. The unemployment rate, slight bump up from prior, 4.1 to 4.2. Average hourly earnings hanging in there, actually higher than prior, coming in at 0.3. Participation rate dropping slightly. Weekly hours, work week actually expanding. Government payrolls down 10K. Manufacturing down 11. Non-farm payrolls private up 83, giving you a net of 73. U6 unemployment rate 7.9, up from 7.7. This morning we still have S&P manufacturing, and then 15 minutes after that at 10 a.m. Eastern we have ISM manufacturing employment. Going to be paying attention to the ISM, especially the prices paid and the employment manufacturing index. That's still expected to be in contraction, and prices are still expected to bump up. So we had the PCE numbers yesterday, which were, higher than expected, and now we have revisions in payrolls. So unemployment potentially not good, but prices still potentially rising. Could get very interesting in the coming months. We also have the consumer sentiment numbers and inflation expectations coming out at 10 a.m. Eastern. So, these will be the final numbers for July. So 10 a.m. is the next big data print we have to pay attention to. Going into the open, Apple up after earnings. All the other Mag 7 are down. Pretty decent reversals in Microsoft and Meta yesterday. Meta, by the way, their earnings report appeared very strong, but if you start looking at their depreciation schedule, oh boy. Don't you want to look into something interesting, start looking into their depreciation and how that boosted their earnings. Groups today, let's just do another quick refresh. Consumer defensive and basic materials are pretty much up. Consumer cyclical, comm services, and industrials are down. Fed watch, we're back to probabilities for the rate cut in September and then in December again. Fear and greed in greed mode. Remember, we were in extreme greed, now dropping back down. We're finally rolling over on cycle tops. We also got the key reversal day in the NASDAQ. I said to watch for that, and we finally got the key reversal day yesterday. Schiller PE still 38.66. This could really drop over a while, but you know what? We're getting the first pullback. The first pullback, we're very overextended from the weekly rotation zone. We don't need to panic yet. We've been prepared potentially for a pullback. Let's just, Sterling, thanks. I'm not going to cover all the earnings this morning, but Sterling did put them in the chat on YouTube. So I got to say good morning to, there's Patrick saying on Rumble. Thank you. And good morning, Rusty on Rumble. Thank you. Remember, you can put it in the chat over there. Let's see. Looking at so many screens. I mean, we're going live on X, we're live on YouTube, we're live on Rumble. All right, so we had the double top in the S&P trigger on the 4 hour. The 4 hour yesterday, and then all the way down to the first and second targets. So first and second targets have been hit. Going to be interesting to see if this bounces back today into the rotation zone, or if we get the first close below the rotation zone since the capitulation bottom and the first cross of the rotation zone. Because so far, so that is what I am looking for. And going into the open, you know, I'm going to be watching if we start getting above 63.25 for potentially a bounce back setup. So that's where it sits there. The other thing, if we roll over again after any bounce back, we have retests as a 6,300 area, and then the final target and a harmonic is down about 62.76 area with the prior support. You see the support ledge. So that's going to be very key if we do roll over again after the open. Good morning, MJ. Good morning, Kevin. Hello, Charles. Good morning, Heinrich. All right, so that's where we sit with that. Looking at the weekly, just to wrap up this week, we're still, even if we hit these other targets, we're still above the weekly rotation zone. And going to be very interesting to see how we close out this week, because if we don't get this substantial bounce, we will have an outside key reversal week. It's still going to be a reversal because we made a higher high than last week and so a lower low than last week. It's going to be interesting to see where we close in relationship to last week's low. That's going to be very interesting. It's an even stronger signal for a continuation pullback if we close below last week's low. And that would be, what would I be watching for the pullback into the rotation zone? So far, the top of the rotation zone is right around 62.37, but that'll keep climbing. The bottom is between just above, right around 60.50. So, NASDAQ gave us a pretty key warning sign yesterday too, with the key reversal day. Higher high than the day before, and closing down on the day, not below the prior day's low, but it'll bounce after the cash stocks were closed. But very bearish day, and then the follow through so far, taking it below the rotation zone right now. So on a bounce right here, we came back down to a very key support level, this 23,065 area on a bounce. This area becomes very key, right around 23,190, 23,200 on any bounce. I'm going to, again, watching how we close in relation to the rotation zone. On a weekly basis, same thing. We made a higher high this week, reversing. Going to be interesting to see where we close in relationship to last week's low. But either way, we still have an outside reversal bar. The weekly rotation zone, which we're very overextended from still, is back at about 22,700. The top of it. And also remember, we have daily cycles rolling over and weekly cycles rolling over. So we could be down to choppy for maybe 2 to 3 weeks. We could stay downwards to choppy. Doesn't have to just collapse. We could also become with downward bias and choppier trade. Good morning, Ted. We could remind me, SWK, remind me, Sterling. All right. So that's, again, what I'm on any bounce, paying attention to 23,200. That would be very key. You can even look slightly below that. If it can't get above 23,140, 150, it's already retested that and rejected. And no, there's not a strong bottoming pattern in the NASDAQ yet. Going into the open. The Dow, we've reconnected with the 50 again. Going to be interesting. We've confirmed a double top, but it's going to be interesting to see where we close today. Where we close. So, a close below 43,973 officially triggers a double top. And the area I would be paying, if that does trigger over the next couple weeks, we could easily return to the prior breakout level and the 200, right, or just above 43,000. And put that into perspective. Based off of this, I mean, people are like already panicking in the street. Oh my gosh, the markets are crashing. This would not be a major crash. This would just be simply a pullback into a massive consolidation area. Same, look at this. Prior breakout, I'm just jumping back to NASDAQ. Prior breakout area is all the way at 22,250. We could easily retest that. Now, I'm not as bullish as everybody else, but we've had to go with the trend because the trend is still up, and I still will watch for buy setups, especially if we get back there, because then we get the secondary reaction, which would tell us a lot. Russell will not be an outside reversal bar because it did not take out the prior week's high. Russell, we had the minor double top, which went through the targets. Now we've confirmed the bigger, this is a very sloppy double top pattern, but we're below the 50 and the 200. So resistance today is about 2189. Looks like it, unless we have a very strong bounce back, looks like it will trigger this very sloppy double top and possibly close below the 200 and the 50 again, which loses two more key levels of support. So then I'd watch for a return to some of these targets lower in the Russell, with the first one being right around 2151. VIX, we had the double bottom we talked about yesterday, a gap above it, and so far running first and second targets are hit. So we had, hey, there, remember we talked about yesterday, watch for that to possibly trigger, and it's, I mean, you had to trigger it on a shorter time frame with momentum, but it was there to at least set an alert. With this gap up, I'm like, oh boy. Here we go. So DAX, remember it was either the breakdown or the breakout. We finally had the breakdown with momentum. Okay, there is still a gap left behind in the DAX all the way back to 23,395. And we do have still a weekly potential double top, which the rotation zone would be out of the way. So I'm watching that. But the first thing I'm keeping an eye on with the DAX, the first thing is to see if we close below 23,671. That would tip the probabilities for a potential retest of 23,240. The yields on the 10-year, this is the actual 10-year contract, broke above key resistance today, and the yields now, well, after a little bounce, it did not invalidate the head and shoulders. So it looks like the head and shoulders is going to play out. Next target, 4.256 and 4.217 are the key targets. Remember, the final target is into the wick. So we could continue to see a pullback in the yields. And that's not based off the potential inflation in the short term from tariffs. That's based off of people rushing into this because of the market drop. OD Green, great opportunities in healthcare sector last couple of days. Feel like the whole market will be choppy to start August. Remember, cycles are finally rolling over. Resistance is futile. There you go. Could you front run the Dow double top in the 4-hour close, or better to wait for today's close? Based off the Dow, I'm personally, because we're against a very key support level, I'm waiting for today's close because even if we bounce, I'm going to be watching for rollover plays. Even if we bounce, I'm going to be looking for rollover plays with the first cross the rotation zone. So either way, I'm going to be patient on the Dow and look for the key rollover plays, especially if we not, even if we bounce next week closer to the 44 150 area. That's personally, again, can't give you specific trading advice, but that's what I'm going to be watching for. What else do we have? We have crude finding a very strong support base. Look, 3 days dipping into this 69.40 area, even just below it, and getting bought. So, keeping an eye on the crude strength. Right now, I'm watching this little mini double going into the cash opening of the stocks because it is valid with the first and second targets, and then the third target virtually takes us to the high. So that's the thing I'm watching. It is already confirmed, but not officially triggered. You can see here it's confirmed even on the 1 hour, but not triggered yet. And I'm watching it on the 1 hour. Because crude would normally, with a slowdown, be breaking down, and it's not. Gold rocketing back, filling the gap, rocketing back into the widening channel. So, again, I did not have a fantastic buy setup. I'll be watching now for any pullback closer to 33.85. Silver, all the way down. This did trigger on the 4 hour, by the way, and hit the first and second targets, and now triggering a little mini 4 hour double bottom. Okay, 4 hour double bottom. So again, I will be patient, watching for the bounce before any other potential rollover plays, and we might be getting the first cross the rotation zone, and we have a gap left behind. So I'm now holding the 50, going to be patient, watching for the bounce play. If you're aggressive, it's a little too late to trade the double, although if it keeps going, there's the gap fill play. Dollar index, very big outside reversal day bar. I want to see how it reacts back into the rotation zone, especially closer beginning of next week to about 98. But this, we ran up, and now this, I think we're getting a little overreaction based off the payroll reports. Euro, we hit the first target and set up the double bottom and finished the double bottom. Had to be traded on momentum only. You see there's the bar from the payroll reports. So we got the rotation zone. I'm going to be watching next week to see how we react closer to about 115.90 for a potential minor topping pattern. If we get through that, then I will be patient. The official invalidation point on the remaining targets for the double is on the close above 116.65. Even the yen, big outside reversal day because the dollar is just getting destroyed this morning. Spiders stalling out yesterday with the, again, very strong reversal day yesterday. This was a still confirmed double top, but not officially triggered on the 4 hour, but confirmed if we put the targets on that for pullback targets. It did not exceed 640.45, so it was still in play. We have the first, it's already gapping down through the second target, but 620, 625 is now going to be a resistance area, and that final target is down by the 50 EMA on the 4 hour. But I'm watching this because we're right down, gapping just below the rotation zone. So again, on the spiders, I want to see how it closes in relation to the rotation zone. And if you look on the weekly, this is now going to last week's low, 626.19. So at least we're going to open below last week's low. What else? What else? We'll get to some other things in a second. Let me just. The Qs was not a double, by the way. The Qs was not a double. I'm just paying attention to the bottom of the rotation zone at about 559, 558, 90 to 559 on a closing basis. Actually, in 560.21 is key on a harmonic level, approximately. Again, a lot of these things we could be starting at least a multi-week pullback. Again, very overbought on the weekly, at least into the weekly rotation zone. What else do we have? Mike on the Dow double, curious what you think about using a sell limit order back to the open bar that established, hold on, the low of the confirmation trigger point to get better reward risk. Info only at thank you for putting that in there. On the Dow, let me click on the right thing. There it is. You can do that. What I like to do is look for at least some kind of rollover pattern on a shorter time frame. You can always put in a limit there. What I like to do is set an alert personally, and then drop down in the time frames. And that's where I will go to a lower time frame, a 1 hour or 15 minutes, and see if we get a little resistance pattern set up there. I really don't like just to sell things back at prices or buy things on dropping prices. I've mentioned that before. I like to find even mini patterns. Christoph, the ZT futures have confirmed a double bottom on the daily time frame. Thank you for putting that in there. What else? And good morning, Christoph. What else? What else? URA. Please type in stuff I've missed. URA. Again, dropping finally. Been waiting for this. By the way, this is not a double top. Why? Because the harmonic was 42.20 and this hit 42.22. So you can't use the targets of the double. The key thing I'm watching in uranium in today with the big gap down in the short term will be a close below 38.46. We're going to open below that. Why? Because that tips the probabilities, and I'm more watching for the reconnection on the 50 with the daily and the prior key support level. All right, also remember uranium's rolling over from the weekly tops, and dailies are still headed down. And from a weekly perspective, we are very overextended from the rotation zone. I will be patiently looking for buy setups over the next couple weeks in uranium. Here's your 2-year notes that Christoph was talking about. There is your double. Completely valid setup. There is your double. So that could possibly take us back to the highs at the end of June. Just curious where the harmonics sit with this too. Look at that. Right, and it looks like it could close also above the 62.5 today. So that'll be interesting. And you got the first target right by the 75. And then you got the 87.5 and the final double target. Thank you for pointing that out, Christoph. Because it's sort of a flight to safety with the dollar drop and the big revisions down. What's Bitcoin doing? Bitcoin broke down yesterday below the rotation zone, but so far not doing much. I'm now looking for potential rollover plays in Bitcoin too on any bounces. There's your Bitcoin. What else? What I missed from Sterling? SWK. This is still, we have to see what the targets is. This would not invalidate the double, but I don't know where the targets are going to fall. See, it's not, you can't trade this as a double. Okay? You can't trade this as a double. Because even this, it's, that might, oh. That's, I wouldn't trade it as a double. Overall, if you're looking for targets to the downside, there's just too many issues. I'd be looking closer to this 6460 area. 64 to 6460 is the first target area in Stanley Black & Decker. Yep, SR3 are rallying strongly. People are bullish, more rate cuts from the Fed. Yeah, they're back to cut in September. All right. Let me just see where the heat map is in the open. Apple's still holding up slightly, but Amazon getting shellacked, down 7%. Let's just take a look at everything's slow today going into the open. By the way, Google, I should have talked about this earlier. Going to be interesting to see. Remember, this has to trigger on a red candle. All right, if it's a green candle, it's not an official trigger, but it has confirmed a potential double top. So you also have a mini potential double top in Google. Oh boy, I have tons of alerts going off. Meta, a little reversal bar yesterday with a huge gap left behind. I'm going to be watching for over the next little bit, especially the markets dropping. A topping play in Meta with a potential gap fill. Microsoft, that was a very bearish bar yesterday. I'm going to be watching over the next bit for also a gap fill in Microsoft. So that's where we sit. Those are the biggies. Tesla, not much to talk about. I was still watching yesterday for it to close back below the 62.5, which it didn't yet. So still being patient on rollover plays in Tesla. Other than that, like, take a look. Not any real bounce yet. Not any real bounce yet. So we still have the final target below for the S&P double. And unless we get some massive buying pressure this afternoon, it looks like we're finally getting a close below the rotation zone. So keep an eye on that going into today. Coming into a very key support level at that final target. So that's where we stand. Net was up 22 after hours. Earnings last night down more than 10. Remember, things are very overextended across the board on most of this crap. So this is not surprising. I mean, we got daily cycles and all these things. We have divergences, daily cycles rolling over. We need the pullbacks into a lot of these rotation zones. And this would not be a big enough pullback on net yet. For me. For a bunch of these things. Like NVIDIA. Not an outside reversal bar today, but finally dropping at least into the daily rotation zone. And look how extended it is. We might be putting in a pretty bearish spinning top today with a potential pullback. Again, this is not a crash move. This is still above the prior breakout level, but we could easily return to the weekly rotation zone over the next couple weeks. So, set alerts for pullback levels and watch for bottoming patterns. And we'll cover those over the next couple weeks on these channels. With that, I shall say I got a ton of alerts going off already. 8 alerts this morning. So I got to go through my charts, see what could be patiently setting up for next week. Gonna be patient. Don't do stupid on a Friday, especially out after with very overextended markets and finally getting the pullback. NASDAQ down 150 basis points. Yeah, next week, so this is where we get to be patient and wait for potentially some good setups. All right. Talk to everyone again next week. Thank you for tuning in. Bye for now.